Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for our Women in Business program. We hope everyone's having a great week so far. We are really pleased to have Jennifer Gray, Vice President of Operations with Topgolf Entertainment Group. She's going to take us through her career path and progression that led her to the highest levels of Topgolf. She's also going to share some of the values that she instills as a leader to her team, her philosophy of directing employees and representing the brand within a traditionally male-dominated industry. So we look forward to hearing her presentation, but first I just want to remind everyone to use the question and answer section of this Zoom. It will be on your toolbar, and that's how you will be able to ask questions throughout the presentation, and at the end we'll field those through Brianna Williams, our Women in Business Chair, the committee chair for this program. She'll be asking those questions at the conclusion of the presentation. So with that being said, I'd like to actually turn it over to Brianna Williams. Not only is she the chair of our Women in Business Committee, but she's also the Community Relations Officer for Queensborough National Bank and Trust. Brianna?
Thank you, Blair. Good morning to everybody. I want to start off by first thanking our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor that made today possible is Doctors Hospital. They're our series sponsor for August, September, and October. Our technology sponsor, Hillary K Studios. Our media sponsors, as always, the Augusta Chronicle and News 12 NBC 26. I also would like to thank Don Jones with Kelly Promotional Products for providing a very special speaker gift for our speaker, Jen Gray, today. First, I want to introduce our presenting sponsor who's making the remarks today. It's Laura Cox. She's been employed at Doctors Hospital of Augusta for 2 years now and in 2 different roles. She started her career as a certified occupation therapy assistant for a year before changing departments and becoming a bariatric coordinator for surgical weight loss. Laura received her Master's of Science in Adult Education that has benefited from both positions. She has taken the knowledge she gained from 6.5 years of teaching and instructional design and applied it to helping advance the bariatric program at Doctors. Laura still works as a therapist on weekends and loves the balance between helping recover to helping people change their lives forever. Now I would like to send it over to Laura. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you. Thanks, Brianna. I'm so excited to represent Doctors Hospital and tell y'all about all the growth that we're doing here. We're growing in leaps and bounds at Doctors Hospital, and I just want to highlight a few of our most recent endeavors. We are currently building a $75 million expansion. It's expansion in several different areas, and I'm going to highlight the ones that we're most proud of. We are building a 550 space parking deck that is due to open in late October. That's literally outside my door, so that will be beneficial to everyone. Doctors Hospital has never had a parking garage on campus, so this is our first. Also, we are building 4 new operating rooms opening in November with a dedicated burn post-surgical recovery area. Everyone knows that burn patients are extremely sensitive, and now they're going to have their own recovery area, and we're super excited about that. Also under construction is a 68,000 square foot tower that is set to open in February of 2021. This is expanding the Joseph M. Still Burn Center by 20 beds, which is huge, and adding 28 med-surg beds. The new tower is going to be opened with 3 floors, but it has the potential to go into 4 floors in the future. Doctors might be known for our world-renowned burn center, the Joseph M. Still Burn Center, but we have very many specialty service lines. For example, we have the busiest radiology oncology center in all of the 180 HCA hospitals nationwide. They do 800 patients a year. We have state-of-the-art technology. It's sort of a launch here. Since we're so busy, we do trials. We have a cyber knife that delivers precise radiation directly to a tumor site. And of course, our ortho department is accredited by the Joint Commission Center of Excellence for hip and knee replacement. We performed 1,000 total joint replacements last year. Then this brings you to what I do here as a navigator coordinator in my department. We're a community hospital, and we provide options for patients when navigating through their care. The role of navigator is to help guide patients and gather information so they can make the best decision for themselves. Navigators recommend social support and services that maybe patients aren't familiar with. We have navigators in our cancer programs, our women's center, orthopedics, inpatient rehab, and I'm the navigator over bariatrics. I would love to hear from anyone. If y'all have questions, reach out to us. We are always here to answer questions. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Miss Jennifer Gray. She has told us we can call her Jen. So Miss Jen Gray oversees Topgolf's food and beverage program, guest service support center, golf services and Topgolf coach instruction, and high priority strategic projects. Jen joined Topgolf from Maggiano's Little Italy, where she served as co-president and chief operating officer, overseeing 53 restaurants and 10,000 employees. Impressive. She began her career at On the Border Mexican Grill and Cantina in 1998 as a server and a bartender, and worked her way up through the Brinker International family of brands, serving in a variety of roles, including Vice President of Operations and Human Resources, and Senior Director of Operations Services, and gaining invaluable restaurant and hospitality experience. Jennifer studied hospitality management at the University of Georgia and executive leadership at Kellogg School of Business at Northwestern University. She's passionate about giving back to organizations like Make-A-Wish and Habitat for Humanity. In her spare time, if she has any after all of that, Jen enjoys spending time with her family, traveling, watching college football, and trying out new restaurants. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here with you all today. And it was such an honor when I got asked to do this speaking engagement. Thank you for Doctors Hospital. Thank you for the Augusta Chamber for this time together this afternoon. And, it's interesting, the topic, and I want to kind of go a little bit about my career and my history, and all of that sounds great in a bio and a resume, but candidly, I am a Georgia girl. I grew up there. I live in Texas now. However, I grew up all over north part of Georgia, and I really did work my way up in this industry. And so what I've highlighted today to talk to you about, and I'll certainly open for questions at the end, is some things that I think were pivotal to me in my career as a female in this industry. And I hope we do have several men on the call as well. I know this is a women's leadership group, but probably some of the themes you'll hear me talk about today are really about how we involve others in our development, because I think it's really important. So we'll start back, and without revealing my age, I'll tell you that I went to school at UGA, but opened a restaurant right out of school with a couple of friends, and I learned a lot of lessons. I started in the restaurant business when I was 14, and that opening of that business in Roswell, Georgia was like such an eye-opener for me. And I joined On the Border just as a server bartender to make extra cash as I was working on my own restaurant. I had zero money. I had an investor who was really looking to get into the restaurant business, because a lot of times people in the restaurant business think it's fun to have a place where your friends can come hang out, have a drink at the bar, have a great meal. But ultimately, being in the restaurant business is one of the hardest industries in the nation. And so everyone has this vision of grandeur of what it's going to be like, and then you recognize how much hard work it is. So when I started as a server and bartender, it was really just to make some cash and to help support the other business I was involved in. And pretty quickly, that business was not successful for many reasons, and I had a lot of lessons learned. I started kind of opening On the Borders when On the Border was in a huge growth trajectory. I opened as a training captain and opened about 30 units for them, and got really passionate about teaching and facilitation, and just recognizing that developing leaders through learning and engagement was something I was really passionate about. You'll see this kind of play out as I talk about my journey. I worked for On the Border for 5 years in an hourly capacity, and then I became a catering manager, moved to Dallas, Texas for the first time, you know, pretty young, 26, I knew no one, and really just was like ingrained in my work. I loved my job at On the Border. We were a small brand. We were really ingrained in our culture of our food, our service, our hospitality. It was really important to me. And I learned a lot of foundational work about our industry from that brand. And then from there, I needed to move back to Atlanta where my family was. My dad was ill, and I needed to take a different path personally in order to provide him some more support. And I joined Maggiano's Little Italy as a front of the house manager. And in one restaurant, really, this is one pivotal moment in my career, because I'd grown up in a casual dining space. It was tacos and margaritas, and now I was joining more of a polished casual or high-end dining experience. And I needed to be very knowledgeable about the product, knowledgeable about the offering, understanding the guest experience, understanding the associate experience and what that might look like. And so I took a lot of time. I spent 4 years in this one restaurant in Buckhead, and Maggiano's in Buckhead. And I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. I had been a real front of the house person, hospitality, worked really every position, and I decided, you know, I need to learn something new and advance my knowledge. And so I went into the kitchen, and I ran the kitchen there for a couple of years in a very high volume time for that particular Maggiano's, and expanding my horizons and learning something new and pushing my comfort zone, pushing me out of my comfort zone was something that has been a key point of what I would consider part of my success, is just being willing to learn something new outside of that. I'd kind of go back in time a little bit and talk about hospitality, just because I grew up in a large Southern family where we had dinner on the table every Sunday with my grandmother. And just like any family, we were as dysfunctional as it comes, but the food is the thing that connected us. And so that was kind of my passion. The food, like music, like art, really connects us in meaningful ways. It connects us beyond things. It helps us learn about other people, other cultures. And I knew that hospitality that my grandmother demonstrated, and my mom and my aunt, that was within me. And this is going to show up a couple more times, just like that being in service of others and having hospitality in your heart and really loving what you do is sort of how I got passionate about it. So I think it was at Maggiano's when I was in the kitchen that I realized, like, no matter what job I do, I need to be in service of my team, in service of the guests that are coming in our door. And my job was really critical. Whether I had a direct interaction with the guest, I had a direct interaction with the team. This is what sort of coined my phrase of, I believe that the guest experience or the customer experience or consumer experience, whoever your direct end user is in your world, will actually never exceed your team experience. So the engagement of your team is so important in terms of having it translate into a wonderful guest or consumer experience. And so being in the kitchen for me highlighted that, because I didn't have as much direct interaction with the guest, but I recognized that through a really engaged culinary team, I could really positively impact the guest experience. So that's sort of a first pivotal moment in my career and an aha moment for me as I was developing myself. It was a little bit about gaining more knowledge outside of my comfort zone, and then it was also about just recognizing that engagement of your team will translate into the engagement of your guest or your consumer. As I mentioned, I learned a lot from my grandmother, from my aunts, a lot of the female leaders in my family, about how to treat others and lead with your heart. And in the business world, this is one of those things that I feel like, you kind of explain over and over again about how if you can win people's hearts and minds before you ever get to their hands and feet, then you will have someone that's really engaged, and that includes you. And so all of you are leaders in your own organizations, and when you think about that and how engaged you are in your work, those are some questions you should be asking yourself on your development path. Is am I engaged with my heart here? Can I find my purpose? Do I understand how the work that I'm doing is translating into something that's really meaningful on the other side of that? I think that it's important to talk about it here because, in the hospitality business, this is what we do. It's who we are. We serve others. And, just to tell a quick personal story for me, as I was growing in my career, I have a very strong Southern accent. There's no question about it. I love it. I embrace it. But one moment of vulnerability that I'll share with you is that as I started doing, business in large transactions in major other cities in New York and LA, I used to always apologize for my Southern accent because for me it felt like, hey, I'm from the South. And then it was just my own insecurity about how I viewed myself, how I showed up. And if I were giving myself advice now, I would have been so much more confident in my voice and my accent, by the way, because, I am who I am. And I think that, when I go from that kitchen manager at Maggiano's in Buckhead and how that translated into, running one single unit, running an area, and then moving to run more departments across the corporate office, my voice and recognizing who I am and knowing who I am, I think is really what helped me become successful. I want to talk a little bit about the journey is the journey. I grew up in the restaurant business. I really did every job from the front door to the back door. I ran a unit. I ran multiple units. I transitioned from operations. I learned the HR side of the business. I ran like a readiness department, or what was called operational services, which is basically everything that goes out to the restaurants, or in Topgolf case, out to the venues, training and development, learning and development. And when I think back to that journey, I ask myself, like, what were a couple of nuggets? I know that you guys talked in the intro about wanting to know some of those nuggets of like my philosophy about leadership. It's hard to pin that down to 2 or 3 things, but I think one of them is always trying to do the next job. Pay attention to what the next job is that you really want and start learning that job, because knowledge really gives you an advantage. You also have to have mentorship and sponsorship. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2 of those and give a couple of examples. Mentorship, they're different. Mentorship and sponsorship are different. Now, they can come from the same individual, but they are different. Mentorship is you find someone that you trust, that you connect with, and that will tell you the truth. Sometimes we're sensitive. We may be sensitive to feedback. To me, I think feedback is a gift. I think as leaders, we have to have what I call tough skin and a tender heart. When you hear that feedback, recognize that it's a gift and it's there to help you learn. It's there to help you grow. A mentor will tell you the truth. They'll give you that feedback. They'll help you grow. A sponsor is an advocate. And the reason that I think, when I spent my time at Northwestern, it was in a women's leadership program in executive leadership. And a lot of times companies have, like diversity resource groups or women leadership groups. I think one of the big misconceptions is that, a lot of female leaders can get together and solve this gap that exists in our nation around female leadership. And that's just actually not 100% true. We need male advocacy. Men being a part of the equation is a huge part of this. And so sponsorship, if you're a young female leader or growing your career, and having male sponsorship is really, really important. It's an advocate on the senior team that will speak on behalf of you in your terms of your strengths and your accomplishments. Some of the things that you've been working on and that you're studying, that you're learning, like building those relationships is really, really key. So I talk about those 2 differences, and I want to go into a little bit of a story about a mentor that I once had and some of the characteristics that I feel like helped me the most. One is which this mentor had incredible boundaries. And when I say that, and I know this is tough for everybody in this new virtual world, these boundaries they allowed me freedom. And so the boundaries were there. It's like, here's your guardrails. Here's what I expect of you. Here's the expectations. Now go run. You have the autonomy to make great decisions. And then that person wasn't always available to me. And I had to make decisions, and I had to make mistakes, and I had to learn from those mistakes. And so get very clear with your supervisor, your boss, your mentors, whoever they might be that are helping you shape your boundaries for your career path, and say, what freedom do I have? What autonomy do I have to make decisions? Do I have an environment to make mistakes, and allow for those mistakes? Because the best learning lessons happen when we make mistakes and we have the freedom to grow. And so when you're thinking about that mentor or that person that's going to continue to help you with your career, I would just encourage you to find someone that you trust, that will help and that will tell you the truth, and that will also help you with your boundaries and understanding that piece, and give you a lot of feedback on how you're doing against that. The other big piece of advice I feel like I learned later in my career was to have what I call a personal board of directors. Growing up in operations, you know, a lot of times operators, we're all about execution. It's like, hey, the strategy is created, now let's go make it happen in the ops world. And I would call it blossoming and growing, and really trying to find out how to continue to advance my career. I recognized that I had, you know, a lot of knowledge gaps and things that I needed to kind of get some expert advice on in other perspectives. And so I built a personal board of directors in finance, in marketing, in HR, in supply chain, and some other, and they weren't all within my own company. They were within my network. And some of them I worked really hard to gain through a network, because I wanted to just have external perspective. And I think most of the time your personal board of directors doesn't always live within your organization, because like mentorship, it's someone that you can talk to about what might be going on in the industry, what might be going on in the world, and it's just someone that you really trust as an expert to come to you with external perspectives. I think the next piece of advice that I have in terms of my growth path and how it might actually translate for you, if I were speaking to my younger self as I was growing my career, I would say, be confident in your voice. Know yourself. A lot of times as female leaders, we get what's called the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is really just more about how we're wired, and it basically means that we feel that we are going to be found out, that maybe we're not qualified, or that maybe we're not ready for the job. And it's really interesting to think back about that, because it's actually proven to be 100% true. If you give the job description of a job to a male and a female, and we're totally wired differently, the woman is going to look at the job description and say, I need to check every box on this job description to make sure that I'm qualified to feel validated enough to actually apply for the job. The male is going to go, okay, I've got about 30%. I can check about 3 of these boxes. I'm about 30%, but I'm confident because I've done similar things, or they just view the job description so differently. I know we have males on the call, and it's important for you to think about this as you're also hiring female talent, because we are naturally wired to question ourselves. We're naturally wired to go, am I qualified, or am I going to be found out that I don't have all the qualifications that stack up against this job description. So I would encourage you to be confident in yourself and confident in your voice, and go back to those points in your career where you've learned the most, and what were the settings? What were the settings where you learned the most and where you grew the most? In addition, I would encourage you to, as you're building your personal board of directors or mentors or sponsors, really think about the work that doesn't feel like work, the thing that fuels your passion. And as you're expanding and learning other avenues, learning other business lines, when are you getting up early in the morning, and when are you staying up late at night to work on something that's not necessarily required? When you can have that fuel, that preparation meet opportunity, you've sort of found your sweet spot. in terms of what your job trajectory or your career trajectory could look like long term. The reason that I was really passionate about learning the HR side of the business is because I was a team first leader. I always recognized that I could get results, business results, through the development of my team. I talked about being a servant leader in hospitality earlier, but recognizing that when you can figure out on your team who knows what expertise, what makes people tick, and you can leverage their strengths to drive business performance results, it's when I was in my best element. And so therefore, I think that building of a great team and that getting results through that team was my passion. So I wanted to know everything about team engagement and turnover, the things that drive turnover. And so that's how I learned something about myself that really fueled my passion to say, here, what else do I want to go learn besides operations? And the next thing I wanted to learn was really HR, because I know the HR and our people partners and our businesses, they help us understand what's going on with people, organizational development, all those parts of the business are really what fueled my passion. And so as I found that sweet spot, it allowed me to expand my horizons. So I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to ask for help, and admit your mistakes. There's many times I've made lots of mistakes, and we strive so hard for perfection as female leaders, and perfection doesn't exist. We put ourselves in that space where we have to be the best wife, the best daughter, the best mom, the best sister, all of the things, and the best business leader. And we're balancing those things that are going on at home, the things that are going on at work. Give yourself permission to focus on progress and not perfection, because we try to be the perfect of everything, and then we give up being really good at a lot for that strive for perfection. So that would probably be my last piece of advice, is that I've spent too much time focused on perfection over my career, and recognizing that being just good enough, being present in your space, being okay with who you are and where you are, and focus on progress throughout your career will give you a whole lot more freedom to be creative, because that space that you take up to just try to be perfect, to be so focused on progress and future and building and learning, it's just not a place that you should spend time. So I know I've recapped and probably gone a little bit too fast, but I will just kind of recap a few of the major points that I made, just so that you guys have a little bit of a sense of where I've been in my career, a little bit about how I lead my team. It all comes from a place of a service mindset, a servant leader, hospitality leader, taking care of your team first. Your guest experience will never exceed your team experience. I learned that hospitality from my family and my upbringing, and I'm very grateful for that. Pay attention to your mentorship or your sponsorship, and build your own personal board of directors, and be confident. Be confident in who you are and where you are. Give yourself freedom and permission to focus on progress and not perfection. These are key components that I still today work on, and we as female leaders always should be focused on, in that perfection is holding you back from real meaningful growth and real meaningful progress. And allow yourself to make some mistakes along the way, and be sure to ask for help for those around you. So that's my short update of my career, kind of how I think about leadership, how I think about leading our team, how I think about the growth of my trajectory. And I changed jobs from, co-president, chief operating officer for Maggiano's, which was a wonderful brand, to Topgolf because of that growth step. I wanted to learn something new. I wanted to be part of a rocket ship brand that was growing like crazy, and we are. And so that for me was the decision point to say, it's time for me to grow. And not to mention, I didn't feel like I had been really old enough to work somewhere 20 years. That was kind of crazy for me too, but I did spend 20 years with Brinker. It was a wonderful foundational company for me. I loved working there. It had a great culture. And then I moved to Topgolf, and I felt I hit the cultural lottery. So again, thank you all for the time today. I know I'm certainly an open book for Q&A. I know we're probably going to have some questions come in. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak to everyone today. So Brianna, I'll turn it back over to you.
I'm trying to get my video going. If Sarah can help me out with that, it's not letting me start my video, but I think you guys can hear me. I hope you can. So if you can hear me, Jennifer, give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So like you said, we do have a couple of questions. The first one I'm going to throw your way is, what would you say has been the largest obstacle you've had to overcome throughout your career? The largest obstacle you've had to overcome throughout your career?
The largest obstacle I've faced, honestly, has been the last 6 months. I can think of other obstacles as it relates to my journey, but candidly, closing every Topgolf venue on March 18th to a pandemic and shutting down the entire business, resetting the business model in a time that we were in high growth mode and changing trajectories. Now we have every U.S. venue reopened as of last Monday. It was a large obstacle for multiple reasons. One is that there's this spectrum of what I call fear, grief, and acceptance that's out in the world today. That's really about how people are showing up, whether it's remotely or in person. Just navigating the change and navigating a lot of the team leadership and making sure that the 20,000 associates that report up to me and the direct team that reports into me felt safe, psychologically safe in the workplace, and also safe when we reopened the venues. That's an external thing that happened, and that I feel like was a really huge obstacle. Maybe I have a little bit of recency theory going on just because it's been so recent, but that's probably one huge one. I don't know if there's an additional question of like what I feel like really helped with overcoming that obstacle. I think in all the times that I've been on really high performing teams, there's this mantra of talk when you're tired, keep talking about what's happening, be flexible, keep recognizing that we need to be nimble during change, understand your obstacles and the things that you're facing and how to remove them the best that you possibly can in the most cross-functional way possible. It's arguably been the largest obstacle I've faced in my career, but it's important that communication happens along the way in order to keep things moving forward.
Definitely. Oh, that's a great answer. Thank you. Let me pull
Absolutely.
this one up. All right, the next one, how do you juggle being a mother and having a career? How do you voice your opinion as a female in a male-dominated career without being seen as too emotional or too aggressive? That's kind of two questions in one, so I guess we'll go to the first one. I don't remember if you said if you have children or not, but how do you juggle being a mother or wife and having a career?
Yeah, I don't have children, but I am married, and I think it's an interesting time. It kind of goes back to that perfection and what we expect of ourselves. One thing that I think I could give you as a tidbit that's helpful, I'll talk about the emotional part in a minute, that I feel like is helpful is that whether I'm planning a month calendar, a quarter calendar, a year-long calendar, I put my personal stuff in there first. That means if I need to go see my mom once a month who still lives in Georgia and her health is not well, so I need to go to Georgia. If I have family birthdays, if I have celebrations I want to be a part of, if I have learning that I want to do, if I have things that are related to me, my family, I plug those into my calendar first, because what happens otherwise is that the work will dictate your calendar. And the work will always be there. So do your best. And that might mean you have, for your children's schedule, you have to do a lot of things like navigating, saying, hey, I see we have this soccer dinner coming up on this date. What am I responsible for? And like getting all of that lined out. It will have you force others to be a little bit more prepared. But once all that's done, then if you can have the flexibility in your schedule to actually work around some of those things. I think one of the silver linings of COVID is that we are going to come out on the other side of this with more flexibility of schedule. And while it's really hard right now, and I have several female leaders on my team, especially several that have young children, that are saying, hey, in this virtual world, how do we be a mom, a business leader, balance the kids' school schedule, which some of it's remote, some of it's going back. I think it's still very blurry right now in this current world, but I would say that my best advice would be do your absolute best to put your personal stuff on the calendar first, and then ask for help.
That is a great idea. The second part of that question, which is a different question, how do you voice your opinion as a female in a male-dominated career without being seen as emotional or too aggressive? That's a good one.
This comes back to like relationship building. I'm an emotional leader. If you go look at all my personality profiles, like I'm the highest off the charts on empathy. I'm highly emotional. I'm a feeler. And I don't apologize for my emotion. If something has gotten me that frustrated, because typically, right, we cry because we're frustrated or angry. It's not, that emotion is not from sadness. It's typically because we're really frustrated with the situation. So if I happen to be emotional in a scenario, I just let it play out. It's not, it's not always viewed as overly emotional. The way that I try to set things up is like I can compartmentalize. I think this is one of the things that you learn, as you're growing your career, is to compartmentalize. And you can go from a very stressful emotional situation into something that your leadership needs to be extremely positive. So one of those things that helps me is if I'm finding emotion building, I write it down. Like, what's causing the emotion? Why am I frustrated? What am I really angry about? If I ask myself like 5 whys of like what might be causing that emotion, I'll get to the root cause. Then I try to address it at that level. In terms of being aggressive, one of the things that's interesting is I believe in a couple things. One is data and the other is observation. And I think when you have good data, the data will help you in your, whatever it is you're feeling like you want to be aggressive about, have it be grounded in data. And then your observation, or what I call more like, I guess the word would be qualitative, right? You've got quantitative information and you've got qualitative information. When you have those two things, then they help you balance that voice, right? Of like, if you're really passionate about something, or passion is like, aggressive is a verb that's related to passion, right? And if you're really passionate about something, it's typically grounded in data or qualitative feedback. So I would just question myself and go, okay, if I'm really going all in on one or two big things, I want to make sure I'm grounded in the numbers. I want to make sure I'm also grounded in the qualitative feedback. Those things help you balance what could be viewed as aggression, because when you come with facts, whether you're passionate or emotional or aggressive, the facts actually are the things that will help you deliver those messages in a way that are just as meaningful as anyone else that's coming to the table.
Wow. Thank you for that. That's great too. Another question I'm going to send your way. How do you maintain your motivation daily, and how do you keep your team motivated daily?
Absolutely. This is one I get asked a lot. I think I start my day every day with 3 things I'm grateful for. And that might be a quick, like, thank you, I'm grateful for the sunshine, or I'm grateful for the rain, or I'm whatever it might be in the shower, I'm just grateful for the hot water. Like, sometimes it's very simple, and other times it's like bigger picture things, the things I'm really grateful for, because that for me is what grounds me in a new day. I also do this with my team often. If we have a birthday or an anniversary or a big accomplishment, we stop, and we've been doing this over Zoom, and I allow this, the team is all about gratitude. Okay, today is so-and-so's birthday. Let's just shower them with quite a bit of gratitude. What do you love about them? What do you appreciate about them? How do they show up in this team in a really great way? And I feel like if you don't stop and do some of that gratitude and that appreciation, like that's like the basis of motivation, right? Feeling like not only you belong, feel like you're cared for, but that you're also really appreciated, because feeling valued is like one of the most like it's just paramount to everything else. And so that's probably that's one of the ways I say very personally motivated. Even if you've had the longest, toughest day, most challenging day, when you can get grounded in gratitude, it's awesome. And some of you, like, lean on the things that work for you, right? Some of it might be prayer, it might be meditation, it might be your faith, it might be your family, it might be your friend group, it might be things that really you have to just have a vent session with someone and just get it out, write it down, whatever. If you stay stuck there long enough, it will hold you back. So you have to figure out ways to process things as they're coming at you. And then I think from a team dynamic standpoint is I show a lot of vulnerability. I'm actually having a team meeting this week. It's the first time my entire team of national directors have been together since April, when everything really kind of went sideways. And we're having a meeting in person. We're 6 feet apart. We spent all day yesterday just really processing the grief that we've been feeling, right, of our pre-COVID life. Like, everyone's experiencing a little bit of grief of like what life was like prior to this pandemic, and just talking about it. And there's tears, there's vulnerability, there's emotion in what we do. But I believe that if you don't connect to that, you can't move forward. You have to connect to the heart. So I'm real with my team. If I'm struggling with something, I admit it, and I ask for their help, and I ask for their feedback. And I also ask for them to hold me accountable if it's something that I'm working on, and say, hey, look, this is something I really want your feedback on. It all has to be grounded in trust, and really calling out. Like, productive conflict is really healthy and helps us build trust. And so those are just some of the things I do for motivation. I also think about external sources of motivation, like whether it's listening to great music to get you fired up, or reading a book that's awesome, or listening to a podcast that's like about something that you're really passionate about. Those also help us keep very motivated in times where we're feeling not that great.
Oh, thank you. I have another one for you. Has there been anyone in particular that has inspired you, and why?
Oh my gosh, like that is such a big question for me. Absolutely. Let's see. I think about great coaches. I mean, Coach K is someone who, that's where the mantra, talk when you're tired, just this legacy of like high performing teams. And it seems sort of, the reason we use the term talk when you're tired is because it seems counterproductive to talk when you're trying to conserve energy and you're tired, but actually talking and communicating and keeping things going is really, really powerful. My goodness, I'm a big Brene Brown fan. I mean, I think that her study of shame, and the reason I talk so much about perfection is that the book, The Gift of Imperfection, really helped me transform my view of myself as a leader and as a female leader. I think the work she's doing is just phenomenal. And if you haven't seen any of her books or read or listened to her podcast, she's just dynamite. Jeff Bezos is someone who I have studied and been inspired by, and thinking back 10 years ago about what was going on with Amazon and how all of the capital outlay they were laying out to build this infrastructure. And, Amazon really, from a profitability standpoint, was just really way ahead of their time. But it took them a while to get there in terms of like their vision. And just think about that. And when I think about Topgolf and how innovation and technology are just at the forefront of what we do, that part gets me fired up, because, at Topgolf, it is our purpose to connect people in meaningful ways and introduce the game of golf to folks that have never been introduced to it before. And when I see like that innovation come to life on the tee line, where people get the opportunity to swing a club for the first time, or hit a target for the very first time, it's so motivating and inspiring. So I try to think about the Topgolf experience with like heavy innovators that are looking at the future, and say, how do we continue to push our brand forward with that type of thinking?
Thank you. I will tell you this, the only times I have swung a golf club have been at Top Golf, Alpharetta, and of course Augusta. I haven't hit a target, but we'll just kind of glaze right over that. But so yeah, so the experience you're talking about.
There's no pressure. Like I'm not a great golfer either. I mean, I'm loving that we're in Augusta because it is grounded in that traditional history of golf, and what a great opportunity to partner in such a phenomenal city. But trust me, like 85% of our guests are not golfers. They get introduced because they love the idea of coming out, being a part of something that seems cool, or specifically in Augusta with all the open air space and the community space is like, just come out, be socially distanced now in the new world. And we've got dividers in between each bay and 11 feet between tee to tee. So we're very socially distanced now. And I think people are finding that, wow, this is just a fun place to get out and connect. And we've heard that a lot from our guests. So don't put pressure on yourself about learning how to golf. We've got instructors that can teach you how to hold that club too, if you want a little bit more help. Because I know I took a couple lessons and it changed the game for me. So still not comfortable enough quite yet for green grass, but I'm pretty decent at Top Golf after a lot of time. So
there you go. That makes you feel a lot better. I think we'll go probably with one more. If you had to start over from scratch, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would do differently? So early on in your career, is there anything that you would do differently knowing everything that you know now?
I would have advocated for myself earlier. I was like, head down, do my work will get noticed. Keep putting things in your backpack, keep carrying the backpack up the hill, right? Like I just had this mentality of like, my work will be noticed. And I think advocating for yourself in the right way is really important. So get clear on the results you're driving for and then showcase those results. I think if I had done that really earlier in my career, it probably would have, helped me grow faster. And it would also have helped me just like be a bit more confident, because I always expected others to kind of recognize my work instead of me just actually talking about it. And in a way that is authentic, right? Like it's not about me. It's about the work I'm doing and how it's impacting what I call that outer circle. The outer circle is the industry, the business, the team, and then you. So when you can talk about how your work is doing that, it's influencing all of these other layers of the business. It becomes less about that circle of me and more about how it's impacting others, how it's impacting the brand, and how it's impacting the industry, is the way that I would have advocated for myself lots earlier.
Nice. I just checked the clock. It looks like we do have time for one more question. What tool assisted you most entering a male-dominated industry?
What tool? Let me think about that for a second. I don't know if that means like a system, a tool. I guess for me, what comes to mind first is that I'm an active listener. And I think that I take a lot of notes, so I try to really understand and then gain perspective. Like as my male partners, the men that report to me, my male leaders, like all the men around me, I think that if you ask them what tool helped me, they would say that I'm really competitive because I really like to win. That probably was one of the things that always helped me. I also think that I was listening to what was important to not just the male folks on my team, the females too, just to say, hey, what is really important, what motivates you, and what motivates you on this team. That along with like a really good competitive spirit, finding ways to compete that internal competition can be one that is not good. So you've got to find that the times to win and when competition is right. But I like to win against external factors, right? Like how do we win in the big game, in the long game? And so I think if you were asking them, they would say that I'm very competitive, and that's helped me along the way. I'm not sure I answered that exactly what the person was totally looking for. So if there's more clarity, let me know.
No, that's great. Let me just check and make sure we don't have any more questions. So I just want to take the time to go ahead and wrap up and thank you for not only being a representative of female leadership and a great example, but also just sharing your journey with us and taking the time to be with us today. I know I took a lot of notes. That's why I kept looking up and down. I wasn't being rude. I was just taking notes of what you said because you had a lot of great key points to the audience here. So as a thank you, we want to present to you virtually, of course, a thank you gift. It's a set of 4 rocks glasses with your initials engraved in it. Yes. So we will be sending that. We'll be sending that your way soon, and we want to. I want to say thank you with Don Jones with Kelly Promotional Products for providing that for us, and that is also going to be our player gifts at our golf classic that is at Top Golf in Augusta about 2 weeks from today, Monday, September 28th. So it's kind of goes hand in hand with the theme today and with you being here and taking the time again to present to us and just talk to us on a real level and just impart your wisdom. A few housekeeping notes before we dismiss today. Our next Women in Business Luncheon is going to be on Tuesday, October 20th. We have Frank Andrew, President of Carroll Fabrics, and Eve Turner, General Manager and Design Specialist of Decorators Outlet and Interiors. The title of their presentation is going to be Creating an Inclusive Culture that Delivers to the Community. So we're excited about that too. You can register and check for that, the specific time and date under the events tab on the AugustaMetroChamber.com, and you can also register there as well. One more thing, I want to thank our sponsors for today that made today possible again. Our series sponsor is Doctors Hospital. Our technology sponsor is Hillary K Studios. Our media sponsors again today is the Augusta Chronicle and NBC News 1226. Thank you, and also Don Jones with Kelly Promotional Products, again, for providing our speaker gift. And so just thank you all for joining us today. And again, Jen, thank you so much. That presentation was right on the money and very valuable. Thank you again for your time.
My pleasure. It was wonderful being with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I hope everybody has a great day, and we will see you next month on Tuesday, October 20th. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.